Hi everybody, it's Tatiana and I'm gonna be real honest, I'm not having a good day today, but I am really hoping that reviewing A City of Dark Magic by Magnus Flight will help me feel better, because I absolutely loved this story and I am excited about talking about it. I just hate that the day that I had planned to film this review is not a good day for me. But this story follows a woman named Sarah Weston, who is a doctoral candidate in Boston and what is called a musicologist. And she is also an expert on all things Beethoven. She is provided an opportunity to go to Prague to help with the restoration and categorization of Beethoven's art music that is there. How to say artwork? Of his music that's in this castle, and in some cases restore it, in other cases catalog it and provide the necessary information to those who will be coming to this castle that's being restored as a museum to look at this information. That's one thing. Let's go ahead and talk about the things that I loved about this book. That's one thing that I really liked about this. It gave an insight into the process of creating the exhibits that go into a museum, that these things are put together by people who truly love what they are, what they do. The cast of characters in this book, the other academics who are brought in to work in different sections of the museum and pull these things together. You have someone who is an expert in ammunition and ammo. Ammo is ammunition. And guns. You have someone who is a aficionado and expert in restoring art. Paintings, oil paintings. You have someone who also is works in the clothes that they wore during that era and restoring those clothes, and also putting the outfits together and the occasions that the people who lived during the 1600s when these exhibits are going through, when and why they would have worn these, who made them, just all of that in this added to the passion that these people have for the work that they're doing, including Sarah Weston, who is the main character. I don't know if I said that. The passion that she has for Beethoven and the love that she has for him as a composer. The other part of this that I loved is the experience that you have of traveling through the city of Prague and the entire campus, basically, that this castle is set in. I did not read the synopsis of this when I picked this book up. I literally picked this book up because the cover was blue, the typography was gorgeous, and it was $5. I think I read enough to see Prague is a threshold to another world, which is at the very top. And I purchased this right after reading Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor, which is set in Prague, and I hadn't read anything up to that point that was set in Prague. But having never read anything set in Prague and not really looked into the history of Prague, that's another thing that I'll get to in a second. The way that the author describes Prague is excellent. You get to imagine so well what Sarah is going through when she's walking through the grounds of the castle, and it's described to the point that as you move through the story and Sarah is going from the castle, from one castle to another castle, or the castle to the cathedral, the castle to the cemetery, the castle to the cemetery to another museum that's down the street from where her place of business is, you're able to picture those surroundings. And then as the story moves along and she's actually moving through the city of Prague following a hunch of some things, there's no confusion about what this area looks like and the differences in, okay, that's something else. I get to that in a second. Holy bejeebers, there's so much that I loved. The historical significance and importance to the people who live in Prague, that they have for where they live. How there are people who don't even think about Prague as being Prague because they still think of it as Czechoslovakia, or they don't know that Prague used to be Czechoslovakia. The role that Prague played during World War II, when you were dealing with the KGB and the Soviet Union and U.S. spies and KGB spies, and all of those, how all of those things came together, and sometimes you had double agents, and discovering who those double agents were, and then go on back even further to the 15 and 1600s and the significance of what Beethoven did during that time and how he was as a personality, and how losing his hearing, how it was not something that happened all of a sudden. It was something that was gradual, which I don't think a lot of people really know about, that he was losing his hearing over a course of years. And as a kid, when I learned that, I couldn't imagine how much that would be difficult for someone whose business and life is music. And there's this whole story about when he conducted his last symphony, he was off as he was conducting because he could not hear. He was completely deaf by that time, and the entire orchestra basically followed the first chair violinist to go through the orchestra, to go through the symphony, which speaks to the work and how they wanted to preserve the legacy and legend that was Beethoven during this time. And this is not part of the book, but this is just part of my music nerdness coming out as I'm reading this book, and again, why I loved it so much. There is a portion, I would suggest not reading the back, because there is something that's given to you in the synopsis of the book on the back that you don't really find out in the book until you're over 200 pages in. It's a huge spoiler, but it has to do with some of the eccentric characters that you come in contact with in this story. You have the prince, who's a modern day prince. They have followed this whole line to get to the two sides of the family that are now the remaining heirs of this Lobkowitz castle and this Lobkowitz legacy. And yeah, the people who are talked about in this, there's Tycho Brahe and Beethoven and the Prince Lobkowitzes and kings, and because there are like 9 of them. All of these people are real people. And so to have all of them put in this story as you're going through the legacy of the Lobkowitzes was absolutely phenomenal and spot on. Like, there's so much about these real life characters that's added into this book to create this fictionalized story. It's like a work of historical fiction, a work of fantasy, and also a thriller murder mystery. It is a huge amalgamation of genres that is so good. I wish I could give more details as to why I love this, but there are things that happen that I don't want to spoil. There is also a character, because the sequel has to do with this character. There is a character that Sarah is involved with, and she has a really sweet relationship with a child prodigy who is disabled. And Sarah's relationship with that little girl is beautiful. And I can't read this book. Conan O'Brien's blurb that I didn't realize was there when I bought it says, "This deliciously madcap novel has it all. Murder in Prague, time travel, misanthropic Beethoven, tantric sex, and a dwarf with attitude." It wraps it up so well. I'm going to stop talking because I love this book. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good weekend, whenever you see this video. Peace out.